You know the day destroys the night, night divides the day. Try to run, try to hide, break on through to the other side. Break on through to the other side. Break on through to the other side.
God bless America. Welcome to The Ranch, everybody, the podcast that explores the people and happenings of Dry Creek Ranch, Eagle, and the greater Boise area. This is the third interview in the West Ada School District Board of Education candidate interviews. And please do remember, no one knew what the questions were. I didn't publish any of these interviews until the last person had been interviewed. So nobody coming in knew what the other people said or what questions were asked. And I greatly appreciate the opportunity to speak with all 8 of these candidates. They didn't have to come in and speak with me, but they did. And again, I really appreciate it. And I do want to thank our sponsor for this episode, 208 Land Company. They are a landscaping company doing an incredible amount of work in Dry Creek Ranch and the surrounding areas, specifically because they get the job done. I've heard from a lot of people that have used them or are getting bids from them. They're very, very pleased with them. So if you have any landscaping work that you want to get done in your house, 208 Land Company. My guest today is a dad running in Zone 5. There was actually a very interesting exchange right in the beginning about which zone he was in. He was right, I was wrong. Nonetheless, he's running in Zone 5. He has a high schooler, he has a middle schooler. He was really great to talk to. He went to school at Boise State. He has a great appreciation for higher education, but also very much values careers outside of higher education as well. He was wonderful to speak with, but I'll let you hear from him. Without further ado, the man, the myth, the legend, Jeremy Cutler. You got the berry juice, you got the egg, and the boy's just like, but we'll fly through like 12 eggs. 12 is no problem, just 12 eggs, a dozen.
It sounds like we should have had breakfast before the podcast.
We should, I'm kind of hungry. Thank you for coming, sir. I appreciate you.
Yeah, you bet.
So Zone 4, here we are. You're Zone 5. You're Zone 5. So you're running, you're running against Dave and Miguel?
No, Zone 5 is Tom and Renee.
Have I gone insane? It's entirely. Listen, we're gonna check this out.
Yeah,
I'm gonna cut this whole part so we don't seem like idiots.
Please do, because one of us is wrong.
One of us is definitely wrong.
Actually, be worse if I am. So if it is,
listen. The secret's safe with me. All right, here we go. All right, drum roll. You're right. I thought it was Zone 5 for some reason. I'm totally wrong, obviously.
No, I'm glad I'm right, only because like if I would have been wrong and you aired this, and then it's like I just tanked it. He doesn't even know what zone he's running for, you know?
Dude, well, the good news is I can be the idiot and you can be, bringing the sense to the. Okay, so you're welcome. I'm lobbing you softballs, yes. Jeremy. There we go.
Feel free to cut it out.
For some reason, I thought that that Zone 4 was west and Zone 5 was north, but it's the other way. Zone 4 is north and Zone 5 is west.
Well, Zone 5 is, it goes fair. Well, I guess maybe Zone 4 is further north, but
it doesn't.
Yeah,
it doesn't. You're
it's
Zone
kind
5.
of long and skinny.
Yeah. The map. I actually sent the map to a friend of mine, and it said, "Hey, what zone are you?" Because I knew she was in Meridian, and I was like, "Cause I'm interviewing the people that are in like the Meridian area. Are you in this portion?" She's like, I'm Zone. I think she's Zone 3 or something. So it's Zone 2, Zone 4, Zone 5. Right? You're Zone 5. Good times. How long have you been part of the? First off, do you have kids in the district?
I do. I have 2 kids. I have a high schooler and a middle schooler.
Nice.
Yeah, and we've been in the district about 8 years.
Pull this guy a little bit closer. Just
you bet.
There we go. Perfect.
Been in the district about 8 years. We previously, because even when we lived in Southwest Boise, we were in West Ada. So about 10 years total.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So you've been in the school area for 10 years, right? You've been slogging through, right, with your 2 kids. Why now, right? I see a real combination of people where you kind of have people with elementary kids generally are really hammering to make sure they're very, very involved, right? A lot of volunteering, a lot of things like that. And then you have people that have kids that have left the house that are kind of like, hey, I got time. I know how the school works, here. I don't meet a lot of people that have, middle school and high school are really in the thick of it that want to get engaged. What is that for you?
That's a good question. Actually, the desire started probably like 5 or 6 years ago. And this reason might surprise you. Probably not what a lot of people would expect, but because of the calendaring, the school calendar drove me nuts. And the biggest thing about it was I didn't like that the summer shrinks every year. A couple days here, a couple days there. I think it was 2018, 2019, somewhere in there. Boise District started, pushing to start school like mid-August. There was a local group called Save Our Summers that was, advocating let's push it back closer to Labor Day. Kids need summer.
Right.
And I'm a big advocate of that. Kids, you work hard during the school year. The summer break is healthy. It's great. I mean, kids need that. Families need that. And I knew if Boise District got it, West Ada would follow. And so I started getting involved with Boise District as just advocating, no, let's do it. Keep the summer extended. Let's don't keep making school encroach on summers. And so that's kind of where I started, getting interested, getting involved with the school board. And then 2020 and COVID, there was a lot of things that were affecting our kids that I wasn't happy with and got more involved. And so, a previous election, I wasn't at the stage where I could do it, where I was ready. And this time, part of me questions, it is a big commitment. Are you ready to do that? And I said, yeah, as ready as ever. If I wait any longer, my kids are out of school, and yeah, maybe I'll have more time then, but less skin in the game.
Right.
And you can be a good representative if you don't have kids in the district. But having kids in the district, I don't know if you can replace how in touch with it you are, because, hey, mom, dad, guess what I learned in school today? Or guess what we did? Or you're going to their events, you're talking to the staff. Just all this interaction that you don't get if you don't have kids in the district. So I feel like if I'm going to do it, now is the time.
Good for you, man. Sounds like you've been at it, essentially just trying to help behind the scenes for some time.
Yeah, I've wanted to be involved because, we all say our kids are important. And look, I'm not faulting people for, I should be more involved, to be honest. So I want to be careful how I state this, but one of my things is I want the community, I want parents to be more involved. I want the local community to be more in control of what happens in the school, what's taught, how are things taught, who's saying what needs to be taught. It's easy to get caught up in life's busy. I'm just sending my kids there. I'll think about them when they come home. I believe most of us do believe our kids are the most important things. They're at school 7-8 hours a day. We need to be involved with what's going on there. Because that plays a large part in shaping what kind of adults they turn out or turn into.
I agree. It's really startling how much time your kids are around other people.
Yeah.
And, I have kids in elementary school. They get out around 4:00 and then, we're home by 4:15. Well, my kids go to bed early, to be honest. So, they're starting their bed routine by 7, 7:15. I know some people have later schedules. My kids in particular burn real hot. They get up early. They get up 5:36 and start messing around. So by 7, they're shot. Yeah. And so my window of engagement with them has shrunken down to 2.5 hours. We got to eat and we got to get homework done. And then if there's sports, if there's basketball, we go to HSB for basketball. Dude, it's just too much.
Yeah.
Right. It's really, I've been feeling it more lately too, where I'm kind of, it's affecting me more. We get to Friday. I'm like, oh, it's Friday. Thank God. Not even because I get really energized by the work I do. I'll talk to people. There are days this week I've done 3 podcasts in a row. So we're talking 2+ hours of talking to somebody nonstop. And I get home and I'm fired up. I'm not. So it's not that I don't like the work. I really enjoy it. I love talking to people, but I don't get the time to engage with my kids.
Yeah.
You're the first person who has mentioned trying to push back against this ever encroaching standard of we need more school days. We need more to get done. We need more. right? Because I think that's something that has really taken a grip of other areas.
Yeah.
You know, kids going to school at, 6:45 in the morning, getting 0 periods in. And oddly enough, in other countries where you have some of the brightest, from a statistical standpoint, brightest kids in the world, you just see where, like, I think is it South Korea? I can't remember exactly where it is, but there's a book that I believe is called like The Smartest Kids in the World. And it talks about how if you push this far enough, and if you push the, teaching to the test and just cramming as much in, one, you have incredible mental health problems.
Mm-hmm.
You get students that are working literally until like midnight and then up at 5 a.m. They just become these robotic individuals. And yes, they can do things like a computer, like they're just boom, they can pump out information. But they really struggle as human beings. It's not super beneficial to them. What do you see is the downside? I mean, we're not going to become South Korea, right? Wherever that book is based, we're not going to become that. But what do you think the downside is of grabbing like a couple days here and a couple days there and adding a little bit more school time?
Well, I mean, I think maybe I'll back up a little bit. Like, we kind of operate under what I believe is a false premise that adding more school time is going to make everybody smarter and make us excel, because we're told, hey, other countries, like, we got to compete with them and they're doing this, so we got to do that, as if that is the factor that's going to make us stay on top of the competition. I look at history, like, America's been, on top for a long time. I mean, the Greatest Generation, were they going to school more? No. When they sent a man to the moon with limited technology, were they going to school more? No. And when we, invented this or that, like, you name anything that's come out of America, was it because we were going to more school? I don't think so. So I think that's a false premise. So, and like you mentioned, like, we can get them here and train them to be robots and just output all this information. I don't agree that that's really intelligence or wisdom. And I think being more well-rounded, having appropriate balance, like, kids' brains are amazing. They can really learn quickly, soak up a lot of information. By the same token, they need relaxation. They need rest. They need physical exercise. They need to be, mentally stimulated with their friends, like engage person to person, go play sports, to really develop. And I think being more well-rounded is really what will help us succeed and compete with other countries.
This podcast is brought to you by mtustudios.com. If you are looking to start a podcast or make content for any level of your business, MTU Studios can help. Just reach out to us today and we can start shooting tomorrow. I very much agree with that statement. I have a past client. I worked with his daughter who actually has the patent for the first digital camera. And they invited us over to dinner. Very, very intelligent guy, right? Like PhD, way up there. And he was talking about when they were, I mean, he's obviously engineering based and it's like wild intelligent. And he was talking about hiring people for, to fill out the company that he was working on, because they were making this product that obviously revolutionized everything. The capacity to capture images digitally is wild. And he, again, holds the patent to the digital camera. So he was talking about one person that he interviewed in particular. He said this gal came in and she was from like Singapore or something. I can't remember exactly where. And he's like, she went through a program that was the most rigorous he had ever heard of in the entire world. And she's like, she studied for 18 hours a day, took 1 hour personal time, 1 to 1.5 hours personal time, slept the remaining time, so 4.5 to 5 hours of sleep, and then got up and did the exact same thing every single day for years. And he said, now I passed her a question, like, here it is, work this problem out. He said she went after it. Like, it was like she found the answer more quickly than anyone he'd ever asked the answer and the question to. And he was like, she knew exactly what to do, how to work through it. He said, but the problem was I couldn't hire her because I passed her a problem that didn't have a right answer. And that was the issue. Not only did she not produce an answer that was great, she refused to give any answer at all because she just couldn't function in a world that didn't have like a right direction. And I think a lot of American ingenuity is this relentless trial and error of like, is it going to work? Is it not going to work? I have no idea. Like, you have to have a skill set that's good enough to flush out the idea, but then you have to have the willingness to make mistakes, to actually present a solution and find out if it works or not. And then you A/B test. But if somebody's not even willing to present something that doesn't work, or they don't know if it's going to work, you're not going to get anywhere. So I do agree with you that there is a false correlation that it's like, okay, more school days produces better results. That's not necessarily true. At least that's what is my understanding of education. Yeah. And beyond that, I think a lot of the beautiful things about America is that we're a population that's willing to do like ridiculous things, like make the X Games and, like come like start podcasts for no particular reason. And then, we don't know where it's going to end. But, we're trying. We're trying, and it's trash, and it's getting better, and it's getting better, and it's getting better.
But that kind of stuff leads to a lot of innovation.
Right.
And, I mean, you have to keep the end goal in mind. And it's like, what do I want to be in the end? Well, we want to, raise good kids that, sure, can be intelligent, but they can function in society, that can create good communities, and just adding more school is not going to do that.
Right.
Especially when we're talking like, I know this can go both ways because they might say, oh, it's only a couple weeks earlier. Okay, well, by the same token, we're just starting a couple weeks later. Does that matter?
Yeah, right.
Like, is that really going to make the difference? And when we were, when I was involved in the Boise district having discussions, I participated in, like, one night they had people come, they broke us out into working groups to talk through it. And we presented other ideas, and it was clear they didn't want to hear it. The administration board had made up their mind. It really felt like, hey, we brought you all here to make you feel like you're part of it, but we're already doing this.
Talk to me about this. One of the biggest things that I've heard on all levels of the campaigns, be it, for mayor or council or school board, people's sentiment towards these elected representatives is they're not listening to us. The population is not feeling heard. I know, again, you live in Meridian, but there's a big brouhaha with bringing Avamore into the city of Eagle, and, hundreds of people showed up to voice their concern and their hesitation and just flat out disapproval of it. And it happened anyway. And again, it's not, I don't even live in Eagle, so it's not nothing off my back, but the people are not happy about it. Or at least that's the sentiment. What do you think is going on with the West Ada School District? Do you feel like the board and district is doing enough to bring parents into the fold, to not just make them feel falsely like they're being heard, but do you think that their voices are being considered sufficiently?
In the last few years, a lot more, yeah. And I mean, I should recognize too, like, in these positions, like, you can never please everybody. Right. Because, like, at the end of the day, like, decisions are going to be made, and there's going to be a group that's not happy with it, and so they won't feel like they were heard. And so, as a whole, though, for instance, there's a big shakeup in the board in the last couple of years. I think it was 4 of the 5 people on there are within the last couple of years. And, I mean, during COVID, it got to the point where it was hard to have public comment. Like, if you wanted to go and bring something up, it was hard to make that happen. And since then, with the new board members, that's become a lot easier. They have more public input at each meeting. And so, yeah, I do feel like it's definitely improved a lot.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
That's why, I mean, improvement is great. And, like, great that you see something positive the district is doing.
Yeah, and I think they're all trying real hard. And I'm not saying I'll do any better. Like, we're all going to try our best. I hope that I'm open to public input and open to improving.
Well, I feel like you have to believe you could do better.
Yeah.
Because you're trying,
mm-hmm.
right? You're trying to do something. You're trying to improve. You're trying to bring it forward. What is something that you feel like what's a skill set or a perspective or a principle that you feel that you have that the district is lacking that you think would improve everyone's educational experience?
Well, that's a great question. I feel like I have a pretty good ability to listen to people, on both sides of an issue and be able to hear where they're coming from, to empathize with their position. Like, even if it's something I disagree with, to be able to say, okay, yeah, I really still disagree with you, but I understand why you're saying that. And I think that's important. This district's pretty awesome. It's I think it's the biggest district in the state still. A lot of cool opportunities, a lot of great teachers, and a lot of great parents that are involved. But we do have a lot of disagreement. And like I said, everyone's never going to be happy. I think I do have an ability to be able to kind of talk and help people understand each other somewhat successfully.
Gotcha. Now, it is big. West Ada is big. And some would say it's growing.
A little bit.
So this is one of the biggest issues, the expansion of the area. And I mean, the number one thing I was concerned with when I was moving here was like, what are the schools like? And very thankfully, a friend of mine had moved to Eagle a couple years prior, kind of just a couple months into COVID. He was like, dude, it's actually really cool here. And I'm like, oh, I don't believe that. And then I came up and visited. I'm like, oh, it is really cool here. This is great. So the number one consideration when trying to find a place to live was, what are the schools? And West Ada is obviously great. I don't think I'm the only one, or you're the only one, that has started to understand that. Like, a lot of people are moving into this area because it's great. The area is great and the school's great. But that doesn't mean that more people moving in is necessarily going to make things easier to continue delivering these awesome, educational opportunities. How do we deal with growth? How do we deal with more students? How do we deal with our budget and stretching it so that we continue to deliver great education that everyone has come to expect from West Ada?
Yeah, I mean, more people moving in is realistically probably going to make it harder. But more people are going to move in, so we need to figure it out. I mean, I don't think there's a single short answer for that.
Let's do one or two long answers then.
Okay.
No single answer, no short answer. Couple long answers though.
Couple long answers. And I don't want this to be a cop out. This is one area where the community needs to be involved, because as we're growing, I mean, like we see almost every election, there's like a school bond or a levy, and they're planning on building more schools, right? And I mean, there's hot feelings on each side of that, because, that means taxes go up or we're spending more. And it's like, we have so many schools. Do we really need that? So we need to do a better job of helping people understand why. Because as a voter, even though I have kids in the district, it can be hard because, you can look at it and say, man, I see a lot of waste. Do we really need, couldn't we just cut from, this and not do this and have the money we need? That may or may not be true. There are a lot of people moving in, and if we believe education is important, we need a place for these kids to go to school. So I think we need to do better at helping people understand, where is the money going? Why is it needed now? Why is this much needed? Why do we need this school? And really just better educating the public on that.
So the levy that did not pass, you feel it was a matter of education?
I do. Even as someone that's involved, I mean, you got little blips of, we need the levy for this. It's okay, but you're not really telling me why you need it for that. As someone that's fairly involved. So I think, a lot of people, especially people without kids that are here, we're already spending a ton on schools. They don't want to spend more.
Right.
And again, I'm not saying it's right or wrong.
But that's just their sentiment.
Yeah, if you want to convince them, you need to convince them.
Okay, so is it fair to say you were for the levy?
I wasn't for the levy.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Wonderful, because you were saying it's an education that we need to educate them.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, well, okay. So you're not for the levy.
And I wasn't, just for the fact of, I wasn't convinced we needed it.
Okay, great. Talk to me about this. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay. Not that I think you should be for or against it. I'm
Yeah.
just so happy that I was surprised. Like, okay, this is not what you mean.
Yeah.
So great. Not for the levy. You didn't understand why. You have the floor. Go.
Yeah. I mean, I looked up, I read the small excerpts that were, put out in the media, or
$30 million
whatever.
for a playground or something.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, but so why do we need it? And someone could come in and say, hey, you just didn't see this that was put out, and they could give me more information. And I'm going to be honest, like I could read that and say, wow, I should have voted for it. But I didn't get the information as someone that was looking for it. And I don't mean to offend anybody, because I'm sure there might be people that listen that say, man, I was screaming from the rooftops why we needed it. And so, I mean, we need to identify why that information didn't get out, if that's the case, and just help people understand.
Yeah. Again, communication, right? Clarity. Why do we need this? Now, one of the biggest issues I've heard people say was their hesitation with the levy was the $500 million price tag. You look at that and you're like, man, what could I get done for $500 million? Yeah. That's a dump truck of money. But I actually heard another perspective recently that was, yes, I understand this was a huge price tag, but it was over 10 years, right? That's why it was so much. We could have tried to go for like 150 and make it a 2-year thing or a 3-year thing. And that probably would have been more tolerable to people and more palpable, right? Like they would be like, all right, 150 million.
Yeah.
Like, it's monopoly money. It's like $150 million. But again, the issue was in this person's mind is like, the problem was not the price tag amortized over each year. The problem was the overall price tag and then the time frame it was associated with. Do you think that you would have been in favor of a smaller levy if it was a shorter time frame? Like if it was $100 million in 2 years instead of $500 million over 10 years?
I mean, like you say, I think it'd be more palatable, but for me, and not everyone's like me, for me, I'd still need to be convinced, okay, well, why are you asking for this money? Like, why are the normal funds not sufficient? And just to say, well, we're growing, okay, but I need, and I think the voters deserve more, like, hey, we're still, if it's 50 million a year over, each year over 10 years, okay, why 50 million? Still a lot of money.
Still a lot of money. I
mean, especially now, like, a few years back, like, economy was better. Things are tight for everybody now. 50 million, yeah, spread across. Okay, maybe it's a couple hundred on your taxes. It's a couple hundred on your taxes.
Right.
Families feel that.
And I also think that there's this area is very favorable for people that are a little bit older for a myriad of reasons, right? Cost, quality of life, all kinds of things. And because of that, there are a lot of people that have kids, like you mentioned, that are either out of school or they never had kids perhaps, but older people that are kind of like, look, I don't want my taxes to keep going up if you're not articulating exactly why you need this, or if I'm not convinced. One gentleman actually reached out, really educated and cool guy, and was telling me all of the alternatives to some of the things that he had even proposed. He sent me like a 12-page email.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I was like, I don't even know how to get, like, oh my gosh. And again, I love that when people email me and they're like, hey, you need to take a look at this. I don't know that I always get what they want out of it, that they want me to like understand, but I get a lot out of it. Mm-hmm. And so when he emailed me this stuff and was like, we could have done this, I ended up getting on the phone with him and he chatted my ear off for like a half an hour, and it was great. It was like, wow, I had no idea about all this stuff. And again, why is this the only alternative, right? Mm-hmm. Is there no other way to make this happen aside from, the 10-year, 500 billion? Do you think our schools are overcrowded?
I do. I mean, many schools, like, my daughter's at Rocky. Rocky's a great school. There's a lot of kids there. And I mean, that, it's gotten better since Hawaii opened. A lot better. Before Hawaii opened, I mean, you didn't even have enough room in the classes for the kids. And so that, a lot of people didn't realize that. I think that's one of the communication issues. Like, if you can help people understand, like, hey, it's not just that we want to build a new high school. It's that, we've got so many kids in this already big high school that they literally don't like have chairs and desks for them. They're, like sitting in the halls. That helps people understand, okay, it's not just that they want to build it, like they do need it.
Were there actually kids sitting in the halls?
That's what parents said. It was before our daughter was there. But that's what parents
That's what
and friends
people
were
were
telling
reporting.
us. Yeah, people in our community were saying, yeah, their kids are sitting in the halls like they don't have room.
That's rough.
Yeah, but
That's
now,
rough. Because
I mean,
I have heard people allude to that. But
Yeah.
they're like, well, you don't want kids in the hallway. It's like, yeah, of course I don't. Like, nobody
I know.
wants kids in the hallway. But then to hear, it's like, oh, no, this is what was actually happening, reported by parents.
yeah,
right?
we were hearing it from our friends. Granted, since our daughter's been there, Hawaii's been open, and so
Pressure relief
that's
valve.
alleviated. There's still a lot of kids there, but I mean, my wife's a teacher. She hasn't taught since we've had kids, but so I would hear every day from her about, like, when she had almost 30 kids in kindergarten, like how rough that was to be able to give the kids the attention they need. And so
Especially with those little kids moving around like crazy.
yeah.
Yeah.
In high school, is a little different, but it's still nice if you can have a better teacher to student ratio, and it's going to be more beneficial to the students.
I was on a call regarding a charter school a little while ago, and the charter school, one of the consultants actually brought up the fact that the Boise school district is shrinking. And they also pointed out, and again, this is what the consultant was saying, and I gotta rip up these facts or pull them up. But the consultant was also saying that the largest classes for West Ada are actually the junior and senior classes, and then the sophomore class is slightly smaller, freshman class, and it kind of tiered off,
Yeah.
right? And that's an indication that there might be relief for the overcrowding just because of demographics of the schools in the coming years. We have a much larger portion of people homeschooling at this point. Charter schools are opening up, all kinds of little things like that. Do you think it's possible that the overcrowding issue will potentially resolve itself in years to come just by shrinking populations? Or do you think there might be a dip and then a rebound? Or what are your thoughts?
I think there could. That can be really hard to forecast, right? And I think a big factor is just the way housing prices have gone. Makes it harder for, younger families to move into certain neighborhoods. And so then there's not as many kids. Increased homeschooling, like you said.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it could. And so it's really important that the board and the district have, experts helping them do those studies on demographics, because you got to plan schools way out. So you need to have a good idea of what's going to happen.
Right.
Yeah, and so I'm not going to predict, like, anything could happen, but
Sure.
it's definitely important to have the right people involved that can help you have a better understanding of what probably will happen.
Right. And I'm trying to see right now if I can look up the actual stat, because it was really shocking when I saw it. Let's make the gross assumption that Matt's an idiot, and that's probably not happening. But if it does, and again, I think it's right. It would be. I even want to see that data again. And again, I was not contributing to this call that I was on, but I was listening to the consultant like, wow, that's really interesting. And I mean, very unfortunately, I didn't know this until I was like 2 or 3 interviews in. So for the 2 or 3 people that I interviewed that I didn't ask this question, it was not by design. It was, I just happened to hear it it was like the beginning of this week or something. It doesn't matter. But the point is, no sweat on that question then. You have high schoolers,
Yeah.
or a high schooler. Okay. This is a big thing. All right. There are a couple things that are unique to high school students that other people don't really have to interact with yet. Right. Specifically, there's the push in education to produce an education of value. And I know that sounds very odd, right? But I think there are a lot of places where students get unceremoniously pushed towards a college education without real forethought of who these people are, who the people as in the students are, what benefit they're getting out of it. It's a foregone conclusion. It's like, well, if you go to college, you're going to be better off. And I think there's a really good case now coming out of the world where it's like, well, better off how?
Yeah.
Right? Like, what do you mean exactly? Are you saying my earning power will be greater? Are you saying that I'm going to be happier as a person? Like, better off how? And there's a big pushback nationally, not just locally, but nationally from like, hey, this is no longer a point that you can just pass on and nobody will ask you to clarify. Like, this is a contested point. Do you think West Ada is doing enough to help the students that want to go to college be competitive? And do you think they're doing enough, that West Ada is doing enough to help the students who perhaps don't want to go to college find productive, valuable pursuits that would help them thrive and contribute to society?
I think they are. I mean, so your first one about helping them if they want to go to college. I've been really impressed. We've been pretty involved in both the middle school and the high school for various reasons, and talking with administrators, with our kids' teachers. There's always outliers, but by and large, there's really great teachers that are enthusiastic about their subjects. They're very knowledgeable about their subjects, that want to be there. The opportunity that the kids have, the classes that they can take. Again, it always comes down to the individual and the parents helping the students, but the opportunity is there. And I feel like the district is doing a pretty good job at providing that. And if you're there at school, putting forth your best effort, yeah, I think you can easily be ready for college.
Do you think that, and let me clarify specifically, say Eagle High or Meridian, say they have a physics class, okay, and everybody likes physics, and you have a very, very enthusiastic physics teacher. I know I did, Mr. Merrill, man.
Oh, Mr. Schmidt was the best, yeah.
Yeah, he was way into it. He had gone to MIT and worked at like Lawrence Livermore Labs, and then decided he wanted to be a teacher. And dude, he was like mad scientist style.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, he was an interesting cat. But we didn't have an honors physics program, right? And a school near us, near my high school, did. And they, of course, slightly more rigorous curriculum, right? I still learned physics, loved it. But they also got the 5.0 scale instead of the 4.0 scale. So they were able to take this honors physics program, which enriched their GPA, enriched their transcript, because they were taking harder classes. And that put them at an advantage. We didn't have that opportunity.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think we're offering enough of those enrichment opportunities where somebody could take perhaps an advanced course or take pair up with like a junior college or something and get college credit?
Yeah. No, I definitely think we are. My daughter is a junior. As a junior, half her classes, she's getting college credit. She had the choice if she wanted to do it. You know, they can do AP or they can do college versions. There's slight differences. And she chose the college versions because she's like, well, why not? In addition, they also have fast forward funds that they can access. Each student is granted these. So like, it costs to get those college credits, but they have these fast forward funds that they can apply to it. And I mean, I didn't have that. I grew up in Twin Falls and loved it. Twin Falls High was great. We had great teachers. I didn't have near this opportunity. Part of that's like they have more opportunities now. Part of it's the time, but also being the biggest district, you have opportunities that others don't. Could you have more? Sure, but I'm amazed at what West Ada has. The other part of your question about helping kids that didn't want to go to college.
Yeah, because again, I don't think everybody really wants or should go to college. I think you get real diminishing return when you push the people that just aren't as academically engaged to a costly 4 years of their life that they may or may not graduate from, and high probability if you're studying just some random nothing degree that you probably won't get a huge jump in earning power either. So for those students, do you think we're offering enough to engage them in the trades and things of that nature?
I think so. I wonder, and actually, no, I was going to say maybe we can always communicate it more, but there's amazing opportunities. You can you can take classes at other high schools if they're not offered at your high school. Meridian High, for instance, has like an amazing auto body shop. I mean, I love cars. As a high school kid, I would have loved that opportunity. And they have a lot of other programs. That's the one I'm interested in because I love cars. There's a lot of opportunity in the district. And I'm glad because I don't think that everyone needs to go to college. If you want to, do it. But again, like I mentioned earlier, with everything, you need to like really be operating with your end goal in mind. What's your mission objective? And like for me, I wanted to be an engineer. And so it was like I needed to go to college because, most engineering jobs, they want to see you have an accredited degree.
Yeah. It's going to be tough without that degree.
Typically. Yeah. And so I needed it. I went to college. I did that. Previous to that, I was pretty set on being an electrician. And you don't need to. I had a friend, his brother-in-law was an electrician. I was talking to him and he's like, you know what though? He's like, you should go get an electrical engineering degree and then be an electrician if you want, design systems. And so that kind of spurred me to think, yeah, that would actually be cool. I went there and found out, well, actually I like mechanical stuff more. So did mechanical engineering. But,
where'd you go to school?
Graduated from Boise State.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And you did mechanical engineering there?
Yeah.
I would have loved to do that. Like, damn it, man.
No regrets.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so cool.
Man, the engineering department at Boise State is fantastic.
I went into college as a math major, and then I actually learned how to write and communicate really effectively. And I switched to rhetoric because I was like, oh, I'll go to law school. And, here I am talking on a mic, but I just really, I love math. I love engineering.
Awesome.
I love it all. But I also have a great appreciation for effective dynamite communication.
Yeah.
Like it's really exciting to me.
Yeah. In the engineering world, you can do some really great things, but if no one is there to communicate what you're doing, what good does it do?
Right. I had a content client last year. So I make content as well, right? That's essentially why I built the studio originally. I was always doing podcasting, but I wasn't just going to build a studio just for podcasts. So I was making content for this client, and it was a real estate app that was super cool, right? And it still exists, but it's not like it's gone. But the problem was it was designed by these guys who understood how to get like metadata, how to compile it, how to display it really well. It had they had like 180 features and filters and all of these things, right? And they couldn't tell people how to use it.
Yeah.
It was impossible for them to express. I'm like, okay, well, just listen, you want me to make content kind of marketing this for you. That's fine. I'm happy to. I know real estate well, and I get the technical side of this, but like, what do you think the benefits are? They're like, oh, you can analyze real estate. I'm like, okay, I understand that, but like, explain like the value prop to me. They're like, well, you have a lot of information. I'm like, I get that. What information do you particularly like? They're like, the stuff related to analyzing.
Yeah.
It's like we just go round and round.
Yeah.
And so I ended up finding all of these crazy uses for it that they, as the engineers, just couldn't wrap their heads around either coming up with because they weren't really creative in that way, or they couldn't articulate, or the things that they were coming up with were so elaborate and complex that it's kind of like nobody's going to go through the steps to do this. Like the average consumer is trying to drive like a 1990 Toyota Corolla, and you've presented them with like a 2024 Ferrari with like all of these knobs and things. Like they're not going to know what to do. Yeah. It's kind of interesting.
It's true. And you get them in that Ferrari and teach them how to drive it, and they're going to enjoy it.
Right. It's the education piece of it.
Yeah.
And then some people obviously ask, well, look, do I even need a Ferrari? Like, I know this is cool and all, but like, why am I going to pay you $50 a month for this thing when I could just get like realtor.com?
Exactly. Well, and college is a lot the same way.
Right.
If you need it for what you're going to do, if you want to be a doctor, like we probably want our doctors going to college and knowing that they're educated and learn things before they operate on us. But one thing I really don't like is a couple of things. A lot of people have been pushed to college when they don't need it or it's not a good fit, and they end up getting a lot of debt that holds them back for years, if not their whole life. And the other thing that probably bothers me the most is I feel like it's kind of been this development of looking down on like blue collar or people who don't go to college. And I, having a lot of blue collar family and doing a lot of construction and farming growing up, like gained a respect that just because you go to college doesn't mean you're smarter or better, and you look at the trades, plumbers, electricians, carpenters, farmers, there's a lot of knowledge that you have to learn. Plumbers and electricians is something I looked into more, so I know a little more about that. It's actually pretty intense education. A lot of it's on the job. I mean, there's knowledge, skills you need to learn.
Yeah. And you can die.
Yeah.
And you can die at someone's house when you're changing an electrical fixture.
Yeah.
Like, when's the last time a CPA died at work?
Right. And so I don't like when those, careers get looked down on.
Right.
And they're very critical. And also, like, you can make a ton of money. And so, like, if you're going to college just to make more money, don't. Like, you need to figure out, like, get the end in mind. Like, what do I want to do? Do I need college for that?
Right.
Okay, I'll go.
Right.
Do I not? Okay, let's do something else.
Right. My dad, who is a physician, when I was in high school, he would always tell me this joke. Like dads get in a habit of telling you the same joke, and you're like, I know. I know where you're going. You've told me this 10 times, right? But his joke, and he very much encouraged me to go to college, right? But I think I was well served by my education. I don't think it was waste. It was a lot cheaper, by the way, back in there. Like when I started at Cal, it was, I think it was $4,000 for the whole year, right? So it's not that it's like $50,000 a year price tag. But he was like, all right, neuroscientist, this was just his joke. This was it. He was like, neuroscientist, right? Wakes up in the middle of the night, hears water running, realizes his toilet is backed up, it's overflowing, destroying his whole bathroom. And he's like, freaks, right? Finds a 24-hour plumber. 24-hour plumber is like, I'm $300 an hour just to show up. Like it's $150 just to show up, and then $300 an hour from every minute they're on. He's like, well, just get here. Guy shows up and he's doing this work, and the neuroscientist is furious, and he's like, I can't believe this. He's like mumbling to himself. It's like $300 an hour is like ridiculous. He's like, I don't even make $300 an hour. And the plumber stops and looks at him, and he's like, yeah, I didn't make $300 an hour when I was a neuroscientist either. Right. So true, yeah. And my dad always emphasized he was not shy about this. He's like, if you take somebody, he's like, I'm a doctor, and he did go to Vietnam, and then he didn't have a great high school education, very rough upbringing. Yeah. So he had to do several years at a junior college and go to UC Davis, and then he went to UCSF med school. But he was like, listen, if you took somebody at 18 who knew how to work, not even crazy. Like you don't have to work 80-hour weeks, but you take somebody who works deliberately and diligently from the age of 18 as an electrician, I will never catch up to them. He's like, they will have out-earned me. He's like, the amount of time it took me to go through the JC, through undergraduate, through medical school, then internships and residencies and everything to get to that point. If somebody just went into the trades and started saving money and got on with their lives, I mean, you're going to buy a house way sooner. You're going to start like investing in your retirement way sooner. All these, like that person, if they invested and didn't just blow the money on boats and motorcycles, will out-earn me my entire life. There's no way I can ever catch up because of compounding interest. And I always thought about that. It's like, why with these trades that we obviously need? I'm quite handy around the house, so it's rare that I call somebody, but it's like, this is really hard stuff. Yeah. I mean, I did a lot of property management in California and maintenance, and it was like, God, man, you see a leak or if some light switch isn't working, like, first off, if it's a light switch, I'm horrified. Like the rawhide gloves come on and I'm real careful. I mean, these are dangerous things. Yeah. I appreciate that. I appreciate your perspective on that.
Oh yeah, no, I feel very strongly about it. And I hope people don't take that as, oh, he's against college.
Oh, you're a terrible person. You're totally against college. That's why you're running for the school board.
Exactly. Education's great, but education doesn't just mean college.
So are we doing enough for those people then? For the people that are going to be seeking something in the trades or alternative, like careers, just not having to do with college?
I mean, from what I see, because of all these other opportunities they have, with like vocational opportunities at the schools.
Yeah.
It seems like we are. I mean, it's something I'd like to look at more and see if there's more we can do for those who don't want to go to college.
Right. Awesome.
Or for, if it's not a good fit for them.
Got you. Little dark turn here. Staying on the topic of high schoolers.
Yeah.
I just spoke with Representative Ted Hill yesterday about fentanyl in the state of Idaho. And man, it was dark. One of the things he said is like, you shouldn't even concern yourself with rehab centers because people are dying fast enough that you don't even catch them and grab them into rehab. And I was like, oh God, it's horrifying. I think it's one of, from the high school standpoint, I think it's one of the greatest concerns that parents have.
Yeah.
And I worked with high schoolers for almost 20 years, and I can tell you the parents were really worried. It's like, don't get pregnant or get anyone pregnant and don't start doing drugs. Mm-hmm. Do you think that West Ada is doing enough for that? Do you think that it's a problem? Do you think they're doing enough? What are your thoughts on the whole thing?
That one's difficult. I really don't know enough to comment on that. I mean, our interactions with the school, it seems like they're trying to keep a very safe environment. But if you're talking about like fentanyl or drug specific, I mean, it's clear they're against it. When it comes to specific things they're doing to help prevent that, I just don't know enough. But I think that issue overall, it's like there's certain things you want the school to be doing, right? It's great. The resource officers around here are really great.
Yes. I'm going to speak with Officer Gomez actually next week. Yeah, I'm very excited.
I don't know him. We've talked to Officer York a lot, and him personally, like he tries really hard to get to know students. And I wondered for a while, like, can he really? And then I saw firsthand, like, it's amazing how much like he remembers kids, and is really trying to help them. I think that can do a lot. Obviously, teachers being aware, administrators, vice principals being aware of signs of drug use or, doing what they can. You want the school to be proactive in that way, and to be able to notify you if they see anything. But when it comes down to it, most of the prevention that can happen, the best prevention for kids is in their own home. It's our responsibility as parents. Like, they're going to be exposed to things, and I hate that as a parent. Like, you want to protect your kids, but the reality is, and I mean, I remember being a kid in high school, like, you're going to be exposed to stuff. How do you decide what you do when you're exposed to that? It's really, what have your parents or people that are close to you, what have they taught you? How have they taught you to react? Have they ingrained in you drugs are bad and why they're bad? Not to just like have fear of dad pulling out his belt or whatever because you did drugs, but has he,
like, you could die?
Yeah,
like
has
today,
dad helped
right
me?
now.
Like, hey, like, I get the appeal of drugs, but like, yeah, like especially fentanyl, you could die. A lot of these other drugs, you could be addicted from the first use, even if you're not. Like,
they could still be laced with fentanyl.
Yeah,
you could think you're getting some crummy weed and it's laced with fentanyl and it's lights out, baby.
That's what's really scary about the fentanyl, is so much is being laced with it, and such a small dose can be fatal. Fentanyl is really, really scary.
Right. Yeah, I always hammer that in with my students. It's like, you don't know. You're eating a gummy or you're eating some little thing. Like, if you drink a beer, you understand what a beer is. You and I'm not saying they should have been drinking, but it's like, Coors Light's a Coors Light. Like, you don't know what you're doing when you ingest something.
Yeah, and so I think that's the most potent prevention, is helping kids understand. And I mean, the school can do that too, but really parents are the closest to them, right? Helping your kids understand, like, hey, I love you, man. This stuff's dangerous. Like, stay away from it.
Yeah. Parents' responsibility. This is a big thing, not just with narcotics and drugs. And I agree with you. Like, the greatest prevention is probably going to start at home. And the more you can focus on mental health and mental well-being of young people, the less inclined they're going to be to have, pregnancies, drugs, things of that nature. When you have a healthier population, those numbers decrease. But parents' responsibility doesn't just stop there. There's a big national debate about what the responsibility is of the school to educate students in things that are, less fun to talk about, to be quite frank. I don't enjoy talking about them. I think a lot of them get very goofy and people get very sensitive, but these are problems that are popping up in other places and even very locally, right? I mean, so specifically with educating students about gender or feeling that the school needs to be this big education mecca for how to deal with gender identity and things of that nature. Some people are saying, yeah, the public schools need to be doing this because they need to be, for a myriad of reasons, compassion and education, and we all need to be tolerant in these things. Yeah. And there are a lot of parents that are rallying against it. It's like, hey, this is the parents' responsibility. You teach math, and I'll teach them about their body and their identity and how to deal with other people. It's not your job to do that. What do you think about that? Because that is an argument, that's a problem that a lot of people, I think is a far away thing, but it's very much here, right? Mm-hmm. Like we've seen the policies in place with hiding information or not sharing information if somebody's struggling with their identity from parents, right? Keeping that in school district and things of that nature in surrounding districts. Really dark stuff that people are coming out in droves saying like, this is inappropriate. What part of that do you want to bite off and talk about?
I'd love to talk about a lot of it, and I'm willing to talk specifics in detail. I kind of want to frame it with something general to begin with, and that is, what is the purpose of a public school? So in my mind, like we want to educate our kids. I wish that my wife and I could homeschool right now, but like most parents, like we're not like independently wealthy. We got to work, and
you're not. Damn.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Sorry, man.
Should have gone for the masters in engineering.
Yeah, I guess should have. Yeah, we have what we need, but man, we got to work, and that's a lot to bite. So, as a community, a public school is you come together, you've hired the teachers, through your tax dollars to teach your kids,
right?
And so they're representing you. They should be teaching what the community wants their kids to be taught. So that's my general framing. So basically it's like we've hired these teachers to teach our kids, right? So as a community, we have a lot of different beliefs. And I think that public education needs to focus on like the core academic things, the math, the reading, writing, science. And I know science can get tricky because what a lot of people call science now like trickles into the gender debate. But really those kinds of hot topics, I really struggle understanding why the school needs to be teaching those. And you can make an argument that if the majority of parents want the school to teach that, then they should be able to teach that. I really am, when it comes down to it, for local control of the schools, so that, especially the federal government isn't necessarily dictating what Idaho should teach their kids. I would even love if West Ada has the most say in the curriculum and what we're teaching our kids, because that's where we live, I think if it were more that way, states and communities would work together voluntarily to create national standards. Anyway, I'm getting a little off topic, but
no. I think that's actually a perspective that I don't think somebody's brought up, which is, look, it's the parents, like the people, right? Yes. And we are hiring you with our tax dollars. And these schools, that's the whole nature of a charter school, right? That you feel that the education being provided by the established public school does not reflect your very specific community values. And you have to make a big argument for like, we have these community values. We are going to get your curriculum done, but with this community value spin in this way. Like that's the nature of, like, there are mechanisms here to actually get schools to reflect what you think. So your position of, hey, look, if like 90% of people wanted this thing to be taught, then, advocate for local control. But I don't think you're saying that 90% of people want that here.
They don't. And like you can we've been in the community for a long time. It's not near that. Like it's not even a majority. And I think this isn't going to make me any friends, but there's a lot of people who just don't want to argue about it, that are bullied into acquiescing, because they don't want to seem like they're unloving or unkind towards individuals who are struggling with gender dysphoria. If you're struggling with gender dysphoria, I feel for you. That's it's hard to imagine a kid that doesn't feel at place in their own body.
Right. And a person,
a
kid or a person.
At the same time, I can't tell you how many times I heard as a teen when I was being taught about puberty, like, your body's changing, you're going to feel out of place. And I feel like that's skipped over so much now, like feeling weird or uncomfortable, not at home in your own body. That's part of being a teenager and part of puberty.
Right.
And so, does it have a place in schools? Well, we have counselors in schools. Like, I think you want to help students feel loved. But when it comes to something so important as like gender identity, is that something you want to hire out? Isn't that something that the parents like should do in their own home?
I mean, I agree with you. I think it. I mean, at the risk of putting out my opinion on this, yeah, I agree with you. And
I mean, you could do so many other analogies. Like, for instance, if we brought up religion, like in the school systems, there's a bunch of different religions, and we all come together because we say, all right, we're a community. First Amendment, we can worship, whatever we want, as long as it doesn't harm others. And so we come to schools and, we have release time for some kids that want to go have religious education, but in the public school, they're not being taught religion, standard religion. Some of these other topics kind of borderline on secular religion.
Right.
I mean, and it's certainly, I know there's people that would argue with me, but the way it's treated, the sacred nature of it, the way you're not allowed to speak against it, there's just no need for it to be in the school. Yeah, we should be loving. We should help all kids, but really, when we come to school, like, and so where I was going with that, if I wanted to preach my religion in the school to all the students, I think I'd get pushback, and that's fine because they're not going to school for that. They're going so that they can academically like progress.
Right. And the point about people being bullied into silence, there was I can't remember exactly what the philosophy was, but there was this beautiful example of, like, say your daughter, all right, in your family, you guys, I presume, eat meat.
Yeah.
Meat eaters, great. God bless it.
I love it.
I love meat. I got a pig roasting oven. Like, I'm an unrepentant carnivore, right?
Same.
Yeah. So there's, imagine this chain reaction. Okay. Your daughter decides that she's going to be vegan.
Oh.
Okay. And you're like, or vegetarian, pick one of them. It doesn't matter.
Kick her out immediately.
Yeah, right. Go onto the street with you, swine.
Yeah.
So she decides she's going to be vegan, okay? And now you and your wife are like, oh, okay, we're going to have steaks tonight, but we'll make sweet potatoes and stuff too. And she's like, well, I can't just live off sweet potatoes. And you're like, okay, we'll do sweet potatoes and like beans, and like dad'll have a steak on the side. And then like weeks go by and you're kind of like, I don't really want to keep making two separate meals.
Yeah.
Like, can't you just get a steak for lunch one day when you're out? Like, let's just make one meal at home that's vegan for dinner so we don't have to like do it. And you're like, all right, I can accommodate myself at other places. And then your friends come over for dinner and you warn them ahead of time. You're like, hey, just so you know, Jenny, I don't know if Jenny's your daughter's name. Mm-hmm. Let's say Jenny. Yeah. Jenny's like, we're actually going to be having, it's going to be great. It's going to be braised broccoli and, sweet potatoes, because we don't like yams, but we got sweet potatoes and, and they're like, okay. Like that's fine. They're like, and don't bring that apple pie. I'll make you an apple pie. It'll be vegan. They're like, okay, man, whatever. And then there's like a block party, right? Like a 4th of July block party. And everyone knows now that your daughter and your family, in fact, are very vegan. And you have friends that would like to cook a pig with you. But one, they know you're probably not going to eat it in solidarity with your daughter. And because of that, they're like, oh, God, we're going to have to make tofurkey or something. And now all of a sudden, a large portion of the community in your little block are behaving differently because your daughter decided to be vegan and they don't want to like ruffle the feathers. Now, this is not like, I understand your daughter's not named Jenny and this is a fictitious example, but I think once you lay it out like that, people recognize how quickly one person and their preferences can gravely change the social interactions of a larger portion of a larger body of people. Yeah. And that's, I think, a lot of what happens. People are like, okay, is it so big? Like, just call Jenny Jake. Like, it's fine. Like, we're just going to go on. And all of a sudden the participation of like, why aren't you doing this? Like, why aren't you going along with this? You're upsetting this person. And by the way, you're upsetting that person's dad or that person's mom. And now this whole group of people have to participate in this Jenny Jake, tofurkey, pig, you know, kind of wrangle. Yeah, nightmare. Tofurkey would be a nightmare. Oh my God. I'm sorry for all the vegetarians. Yeah, it's not my jam. I actually really like turkey. It's my favorite thing about Disneyland. Turkey legs. Yeah.
That's the best form of turkey.
Oh, it's so
if
great.
We can get off topic for a second.
Yeah, sure. Go.
Years ago we went there, you know, my son wanted one. I'm like, bro, that's $14. And he's like, Dad.
It's true.
And
it's so true.
I know, and I'm like, for a turkey leg? And he's like, Dad, I really want that. God. And, you know, I'm looking at his little face, and I'm like, gosh, I'm such a sucker. Okay. And so we get that. Dude, that was good. We bought a lot more after that. Yeah. That was so good. And I couldn't believe how much meat was on that.
Right. They give you, like, industrial strength turkey leg.
Yeah, so we're totally converted to the smoked turkey leg at Disneyland.
They just need to take out those ligaments. The tendons and ligaments are wild. Like, you know how you have chicken? Yeah. You got that one ligament, you got to make it around on the drumstick?
You just floss with it after.
Yeah, I know. But, like, everyone in Disneyland could floss with the number of ligaments in the turkey. Because, like, I love taking big old bites, but every other bite, I got this, like, kebab stick thing, like, going through my mouth. Good point. Yeah.
But for the turkeys to get that big, they need strong ligaments just to hold together.
They can't. I mean, they can barely walk. Did you know that industrial turkey operations, they all have to be artificially inseminated, and because the breasts of the males are so large, they can't even mate. Yeah. So it's like, how would you like to have pecs that are so huge you couldn't even make kids? You're like, look, I'm not sad about my pecs, but I'm a little sad about it. Like, poor turkeys. We're a little off topic. Anyway, slightly. So, okay, understand that perspective. It's the parent's responsibility. Yeah. Let's talk about books, because books kind of are another, again, kind of hot topic that span a wide range. It's not, it's one of those things that you obviously have a range of tolerance with different material. What obligation do you think West State has to provide the widest range of literary material while still trying to err on the side of caution? Or should it err on the side of caution? Should it just like caution to the wind, free speech?
It should definitely err on the side of caution. And I go back to the fact that we're essentially hiring the school district to educate our kids. What responsibility do they have to provide the widest array of literature? Practically zero. Why is it their responsibility to provide literature?
Well, for an education,
granted,
right?
But like, do they need to have every book in their library? No, I don't think so. And like, every parent controls what their kids intake and when, because like kids don't need to see everything. And I know what the books on topic are, these very explicit books, a lot of them that deal with gender identity, like genderqueer, and
that's not just gender identity. That's full pornography.
It is.
And I challenge anyone listening to this, come do a podcast with me, and the episode will get yanked from YouTube because I've done this before. I will display the images from genderqueer, and if you can look me in the face and tell me that it's not explicit pornography, you win the day.
Yep. And I totally agree with you. I unfortunately saw pages from that book, and I wish I wouldn't have. Like, It is obscene. And to think that we need that in our school libraries, I can't be convinced. And the other side will argue and say, well, you're banning books. I mean, this is like the Third Reich, Hitler banned books. Keeping books, obscene material, or really any material that the parents think isn't appropriate for kids out of the school library is not book banning. If you want that book for your kid, order it off the internet. Go to the store and buy it. It's not banned. We have standards.
Right.
And I think every parent has standards for their kids. There's outliers, right? Parents have standards for their kids. It's okay not to have every book in the library. I like that we can have a wide array of literature, but we just need standards. Right. It's like our public library too. I feel the same way there, but especially in the schools, and again, it's, you could compare it to many other things in life, like that you wouldn't want your kids seeing and you don't want in the school. If you want to show it to them at home.
Right. Have you ever seen Total Recall?
It's been a long time.
It's been a minute. It's been a minute, right?
Yeah.
I saw Total Recall when I was younger. It was funny enough. My stepmom is from Montana. Like, I guess this story would convey somewhat sheltered, but my dad took her on a date. It was their first date, and he took her to see Total Recall. She had never seen an R-rated movie. Okay, so imagine your entry into R-rated cinema being Total Recall with heads getting blown off, nudity, all kinds of ridiculous stuff, right? But
I should say, I saw it on TV, so I didn't know heads got blown off.
Oh, yeah. Well, okay, there was a ton of murder. Maybe not the head got removed, which is 2 weeks, and the head comes off. That head didn't get blown off. There was the dude coming out of the guy's chest, Quaid, start the reactor, all of these things, right? Crazy. And there was a stripper, I think, who took her shirt off and she had 3 breasts. It was all futuristic alien stuff, right? Anyway, the point is that that's an R-rated movie. Now, is Total Recall banned? No. But if you had a bunch of 12-year-olds trying to roll into the movie theater to see Total Recall, the person selling tickets would be like, oh, nice try, kiddos.
Exactly.
Get on out of here, because there's the thrice booby lady in there. You're not going to let the kids see that stuff. And it's so, the book banning argument to me is so interesting. It's we have common sense media that tells parents all the time, hey, look, this movie has this. We use common sense media all the time. I don't love everything about it, but it's pretty good with giving me a quick rough and dirty on this kid's movie, or do I want, I have an 11-year-old and a 7-year-old. So it's I don't really want the 7-year-old seeing things that the 11-year-old, and the 11-year-old could watch Jurassic Park, for instance. Yeah. He really got in Jurassic Park recently. And Jurassic Park's gory. And he even said, I watched it with him and watched Jurassic World and all the different versions. He really enjoys it. But I don't want my 7-year-old seeing that. So I feel like it's almost like there's this cognitive dissonance where people are totally happy to restrict cinema in a totally common sense manner. But when it comes to anything bound with pages, they're like, we gotta let that in as a book. You can't ban the book.
I know, and I vehemently disagree with that.
Right.
The Total Recall was a great example, because my parents had standards, and so they weren't going to let me watch a rated R movie when I was a kid. Right. But if it was on TV and edited, okay, and that's why I missed all that stuff.
Right.
But it was this cool Arnold flick about,
Dude is wild.
Yeah, it was.
So who was his wife originally? Sharon Stone? Or something
in real life, or in the movie?
No, in real life. It's Marie Shriver, bro, and I don't know who the maid was. But the point is, no, in the movie, I think it was Sharon Stone, because it doesn't matter. It was classic Arnold. Yeah. He had some really. I looked up to that guy a lot as a kid. Obviously he's a kid. He's big old giant pecs, big old muscles, and he was always, bang bang, shoot him up. I remember seeing Terminator 2, and then it wasn't until years later, because Terminator 2 was one of his greats, and it wasn't until years later when I saw Terminator 1 and realized that he was portrayed as this bad guy, but he took on this good guy persona so intensely after that, where he was saving the world instead of killing the world. I never really saw Conan the Barbarian. I gotta be honest.
Yeah, I saw like clips, but I never saw the whole thing.
I don't think it was one of his best movies.
It must not have been on TV if I missed it.
But it doesn't matter. Yeah. Okay, so book restriction is not book banning. That's good.
Yeah,
Parents'
standards.
responsibility.
Yeah.
You have the Amazon if you want to buy them. Totally fine. Man, we've talked about a lot of things. We've talked about a lot. Do you have anything that you feel like I'm missing? Do you have anything you want to express?
I mean, how many hot button topics do we want to hit? Do we want to talk about COVID?
We can talk about absolutely anything. I am in no rush.
Yeah.
Let's talk about COVID. Do you know they're masking up again in like California and stuff? It's coming.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not here already, someone sometime soon is going to be like, maybe you just put on that little stupid sponge rag thing onto your face again.
I don't think that's going to be successful. Thankfully. I really, I was involved with the school before. When that happened, I was very upset. Again, like, people would rely on the science for the decisions they were making. I'm an engineer. I'm a scientist. Like, I was reading the studies. I could empathize and see how they got there, but I didn't feel like the data was proving it. We were making fear-based decisions. The hard thing for me was seeing my kids suffer because of that. Did I like seeing them at home more? Yeah, sure. Love my kids.
Yeah, for the first week, bro. After that, you're like, you gotta go.
But the Zoom school for kids, I've seen it be effective for some high school kids. And I actually love that there's still an option for like some remote schooling. I have a friend's kid that thrives on that. He can do all his work in a couple hours in a day and knock it out and feel really good about it, go work with his dad in a trade and learn skills. And it's awesome. But forcing that on all kids, man, that wasn't effective. And then when we were like, for a while, we'd be at school one day, not at school one day. And my son doesn't like school anyways. And so that made it even harder. And then telling these little kids or any of the kids, well, you got to mask up. That's hard. It's hard for a lot of kids. And, I won't get into everything. It's hard to think it's effective when, every adult, but especially every kid's like touching it all the time and touching everywhere.
I think the science is out on this, that like cotton and just low end masks were not effective when when you increase moisture in those things, the fabrics cling together, giving greater ingress, egress. Like, they're not effective.
They're not. And just something you brought up earlier, though, is we had this point where you had very polarized feelings from parents in the district. I was very against that. Like, if we're going to have school, then let's go to school and let's not have masks. But there were others who I understand, like, we were being bombarded with constant media telling us, you're all going to die. Half of you are going to die. Your grandma's going to die. Your parents are going to die. That's a lot to put on people. It's especially a lot to put on kids to think, hey, you mess up once, they could die. But we had people living in this fear that were like, I fear to send my kids to school. So I did empathize with that. Like, I'm glad I don't have that much fear. But man, I feel for you, like, because I get that that's real.
Right.
And that, you're sending your same way. I don't want my kids to be exposed to certain things. That same fear of this, this could end one of our family members. So I think it was important to find ways. And really what I would have loved is, hey, everyone that wants to go. If you don't, let's do online and figure out how to make that work.
Right. So
that you can accommodate both groups. I get that it's easy to say and hard to do, but I mean, we went to a lot of effort to do what we did anyways. Like, if you get in that situation, like, I don't see another way around it.
Right. And in my opinion, actually, I was running an SAT classroom during this time. It was not hard to make a hybrid model. I had a big old flat screen behind me. I would Zoom the kids in. There was another screen that showed all the kids. I had an iPad that got mirrored up to the big flat screen, so the kids zooming in could hear and see all the kids in the classroom.
Wow.
The kids in the classroom could hear and see all the kids on Zoom. It was not that technically difficult, and I'm just an idiot SAT tutor. It was like, this is pretty straightforward, guys. Like, I don't know what's going on. Yeah, man, I had a face shield for like a minute. I'm like, oh, this looks really cool. Like, if I'm gonna, and then they're like, well, if you have a face shield, you still have to put a mask on. I'm like, oh, lame, but maybe I'll look cool. And I put the face shield down, and then everything I said reverberated back into my head. I was like, oh, get the hell out.
Yeah.
Like, I thought it was going to be awesome, like a welding mask, and I'd look all cool. I really wanted like, an astronaut helmet or something. I'm like, this is terrible. And again, ineffective. And I'm glad to hear you say that you don't think people will go along with it, because I would not be able to stomach it.
I don't think they will. I mean, they're seeing now, like, they're seeing how ineffective they were, and I think more realizing, like, it was really hard for kids. A lot of like me too, even as an adult, I realized when people were masked up, like, I didn't realize how much I, like, need to see, like, their facial expressions here to really comprehend, and kids especially. And when kids don't get the facial cues and the emotion and expressions from teachers and other kids, that affects social interaction a lot.
A huge amount.
Yeah. But I do want to emphasize too, I really do get where people that were, rooted in that fear, where they were coming from. And like I said, like, as a community, we're hiring the school to educate our kids. Just like I felt like, well, if we're going to do school, let's send our kids. I don't think we should have forced them in that situation to send their kids into what they thought would be a dangerous situation. And so that's why I think the hybrid model for everyone would have been best. Because, I mean, you can never accommodate everybody. In that instance, we had two main sides that we could have probably accommodated better.
I'm going to ask you something.
Yeah.
Nobody else has really brought this up. And since we're on the topic, what would you have done with the teachers that refused to come back? I know this is a very nasty question to ask you.
Yeah, and I'm gonna try and be kind, because again, like, teachers were subject to the same thing as everyone else. There were some that were like, look, I'm looking at the data and I'm not worried.
Right. There were some that were just like, hey, put me back, because if I may, Zoom teaching is terrible from an educator standpoint. Terrible.
Yeah.
You cannot challenge a kid. You know they're lying to you 90% of the time. Like, I considered when I moved up here continuing with the education. My wife asked me about it. I'm like, it would be impossible. I know the kids are lying to me. They're not getting homework done. I can't look them in the eyes and push them. So let me be clear. From a teaching standpoint, it was not great. But there were some people that were like, hey, I'm not coming back in. I'm caring for my mom or something, or I have an immune compromised spouse, or I'm immune compromised. I'm not coming back into the classroom. How do you flush that out, right?
So I think, I mean, if we could have done more of a hybrid model, and again, I don't mean to, like, armchair quarterback everything, because a lot of people are trying their best, right?
Sure.
But in the spirit of analyzing what could we do better in case it happens next time, if we had that hybrid model, then you have some teachers that you need to teach online. And if you have a spot for them to be able to do it remotely, okay. But if you need them in the classroom and they won't come, like, that's the job. And I don't mean to sound harsh, but, like, aren't most careers that way? Like, you're employed with an employer. If you can't do what that employer needs you to do, can you stay employed?
Right. What about the school bus drivers?
Yeah.
Because people make the argument, well, it's different with education. Like, it's like, what about the dude who's driving the kids to school or driving the county connection? Like, if you're a teacher and kids are coming to campus and you're saying you can't come, but you should keep your job, like, the bus driver doesn't have the option to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I get that, they'll argue, well, we're exposed to all these kids and more germs. And I really do understand that. Like I said, my wife taught school, and, like, she got sick a lot then I would get, because the kids are bringing stuff. And I don't mean to sound harsh, but like, it's part of the job, right? And
just like you can die if you're an electrician.
Yeah,
it's part of the job.
It is. And so, it's a risk analysis. So if you're in that job and you say, oh, have to go if I'm going to keep that job, you have to decide, like, they don't owe you that job. It's something the community needs you to do. If you can't do it, then you need to find a different job.
Man, gotcha. So anything else with COVID though? I think we covered the mess.
Yeah.
All right.
I never want to relive that. Like, that was bad for everybody.
Oh,
I just don't want to relive it. And I don't think we're going to, thankfully.
Yeah, what's really interesting is the first podcast I had, I started at the beginning of 2020. And as I was telling you before we started, the majority of the episodes initially were these 10-minute kind of thought bubbles, right? Yeah. Like I'd have philosophical debates with my students. And so I started doing that in a podcast format, 10 minutes, unstructured, one shot, unedited. And I'd go through and like kind of bring this idea all around. Yeah. The kids really liked them and stuff. But it was obviously things that were just popping up in my everyday life, right? Yeah. And what was interesting is I listened back to some of those, and I was doing them 5 days a week. So Monday through Friday, it was, 10-minute episode. And so starting like January, February 2020, all of the way through COVID, and I've listened back onto some of those episodes, especially from the beginning, and now hearing it again, it's like, you have no idea what's coming your way. Yeah. Like, you think you're flattening the curve. I remember one episode, I'm like, yeah, the kids have been home for 3 weeks and we're all kind of cranky and, but it's only going to be a little bit longer. It's like, oh my God, the world was changing right in front of you. You have no idea what's coming down the tracks. And again, this is me just reflecting on my own naive thoughts of how this was going to work out. Now knowing, I could never go through that again. I could never even start that again. They're like, stay at home, flatten the curve. I'm like, flatten yourself with your car. How about that?
Yeah, flatten your curve. But there were blessings from it. I think a lot of the reason we know about some of these things that were in the schools that we disagree with, is because it was over Zoom, and parents were like, "What did I just hear?"
I was like, "What?"
I thought you were in school. Are you on a porn site? Like. Right. And I mean, maybe that's an extreme, but like they heard things and started questioning and so I'm thankful for that aspect, but yeah, I also never want to relive that.
Well, civic participation, right? You're running. There are 3 people in Zone 5 running, right? The first real serious set of interviews I did in 2020 were people running for school board, and the person who was in place, this guy, Greg Marvel, who had been in place for 20 years, had run uncontested for 20 years. And Greg Marvel was doing a fine job in my estimation, but people were so worked up over the fallout of what was going on that you had 3 people in each zone running. And this was something that had been largely uncontested for decades. Yeah. And all of a sudden people were like, I'll stand up. I don't know everything. But like, this is wrong. So on principle, I'm going to run under this platform. We have to get kids back in school. Yeah. And so, what a blessing in that you had people take control, or not take control, but take ownership of the process. It's not like they hijacked the school board or anything, but people started paying attention. And now you have all kinds of participation at school board meetings. You have people paying attention to what's going on. You have people really wanting actual information from boots on the ground people. Yeah. And they want to know what's in school. Yeah, they want to know what's going on.
I love that. Well, and I think it's important for like our elected representatives to cycle a lot, because I think it's good for community members to take those roles. I mean, like with school board, like most parents are like, man, I'm busy. I don't have time for that.
Right.
I got other things that I'd probably prefer to do with my time, but if kids are a priority, I want to do this, and I want to give people choices. There's 3 people running for this seat. I haven't talked to Tom. Renee, I've spoke over the phone, or trying to set up a time to meet in person. She's been nothing but nice to me, and a really kind person. Tom seems like a great person.
I get to meet them both on Monday. I'm
awesome.
Very excited. Yeah, the interviews are going to start dropping on Tuesday of this coming week. Yeah.
Yeah, they both seem great. It's important to give people choices, and there's an argument to have people like your example that are in there for 20 years. They know it well. They do a good job.
Right.
But I think I'd rather just, have someone new, if not every time, every other time at least, like just so you get more people in the community there, more views. It helps the people that fill that role really open their eyes and say, whoa, hey, there's a lot involved here. And then they tell their friends, and it just really promotes community involvement.
Right. And the way the world is changing right now, I mean, you have just legacy forms of doing business, just legacy forms of communicating with people, right? Like you have to, the world is changing. The issues are changing. You have to, and again, I think there is great value in having somebody who has a deep well of knowledge and understanding, but those people don't necessarily have to be on the board. Maybe they can be advisors. Maybe they can be all kinds of things.
Exactly.
But I think there's a really good argument for constant churn, right? Constant competition. It's going to bring out the best. You're going to refine the message. You're going to refine the things that are important to people. And if the elected people are not reflecting the desires and wants of the community, there needs to be churn.
Yeah. You brought up a great point. Like, you don't have to be on the board to help out.
Right.
And so if I don't get elected, I hope I can still help. And the other two candidates have some great skills, and from their experience and from their life experience, from their careers. I hope they remain involved. Right. If I'm elected.
When you're elected. Come on, you got to say it right.
When I'm elected.
When I'm elected. Holla. Tom and Renee.
I appreciate it.
No problem. Well, listen, I appreciate you. Thank you for coming in. Thank you for taking the time.
Absolutely.
Good luck with the campaign. And again, as I was saying before, every time I meet somebody else running, I'm like, these are good people. These are good people. We have good people running. Whoever wins, I hope the people that don't win contribute and help, and I hope the person who does win does the best possible job. So good luck to you.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
This podcast is brought to you by mtustudios.com. If you are looking to start a podcast or make content for any level of your business, MTU Studios can help. Just reach out to us today and we can start shooting tomorrow.